Hello, everyone. I'm Ariel Guersenzvaig, and welcome to What's Wrong with the Podcast. Today, we have the great pleasure of chatting with Ariel Guersenzvaig. Ariel is a professor of design theory at ELISAVA Barcelona School of Design and Engineering. He teaches and writes about the philosophy and ethics of design and technology. More specifically, his work focuses on the ethics of machine intelligence and its effects on society, design studies, and professional ethics. He has authored and co-authored more than a dozen papers on topics such as autonomous weapons, machine learning in health, algorithmic justice, and professional ethics. He is the author of The Goods of Design, Professional Ethics for Designers, which was reviewed as Essential All Readers by Choice magazine. He has a PhD in design theory from the University of Southampton in UK and a MA in ethics and philosophy of religion from the University of Birmingham, UK. Enjoy. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Today, we have the great pleasure of chatting with Ariel Guersenzvaig. He's a philosopher of design and technology and the author of an incredible book that I found very useful called The Goods of Design. Ariel, welcome.
Happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Please tell us more about yourself and how you came to where you are today.
Well, yeah, it's a kind of a long journey, spanning almost 30 years. I'll try to keep it short. I started working as a web designer in the mid 90s because I was still at uni and the web was kind of being the big thing. Um, and then I learned to program and design websites back then. And then I was studying information science, and that's how I kind of rolled into the field of design. And that's when I took a lot of extra courses on typography and graphic design because I wasn't getting any formal training on that area. But I ended up working just full time in that field. And a few years later, like I kind of I was an interaction designer, like a formal interaction designer. So I did get a lot of training on HCI, human computer interaction, and things like that. And then there was the late 90s, early 2000s, and then we were keeping ourselves busy with information architecture and usability and learning about all these things. And so this was in the Netherlands. I was born in Argentina, but I moved to the Netherlands when I was in my early 20s, and I lived there for more than 10 years. Then I got a teaching opportunity in Spain, and then I moved to Spain in the early 2000s. And I started doing my PhD in design, so in the early 2000s. But I also have two daughters, so that wasn't really doable. So I kind of suspended that. It's really hard to combine like a full-time PhD commitment to having a raising daughters and having a job as well. So I couldn't put that I postponed that, but I kept on reading and in the so I worked as an interaction designer for 10 years, 10 more years. And then I kind of switched uh, to service design. So I was more interested in that area. This was like 2006, 2007. So it was kind of a new thing. And design thinking was like the big thing back then. And I was like writing against it because I hated it from the start. I thought, because I was doing this research on how designers make decisions. So I thought this has nothing to do with how the designers are. No, I mean local designers from Spain and other Dutch designers and others like had nothing to do with the idea of having like exploring multiple alternatives and doing this. Yeah, that's not how expert designers actually make decisions. So they go in a very different way. So that kind of I hated the idea. I mean, some techniques of design thinking are cool, of course, but I hated the premises of design thinking. So I kind of went back to uni and I finished my PhD, which I did in Southampton in the UK, and it was on decision making in design. So it was like in decision making, you have different perspectives, like how to you can have prescriptive models of decision making. That means they tell you how to decide, so what good decisions are, right? So that's highly mathematical, and all this rational choice theory and economics are based on these prescriptive normative models of decision making. And I was trying to do something different. So then of course, during my research, I discovered these descriptive models with Kahneman, with thinking fast and slow. Here is very popular, won the Nobel Prize. And actually, that's a great perspective, but I didn't completely like it because he was describing how people make decisions, but he was, as a benchmark of good decision making, he was still using these highly normative models, so these mathematical models. So then all of a sudden we were all irrational. And so then all these hundreds of books telling you how irrational we are in our decision making, and I kind of resisted that idea. So then I discovered different models that are also descriptive, but do not take these classical models of decision making that are based on the Homo economicus idea of a rational, mm, yeah, maximizer. Like the person that's doing this complex calculation and analyzing alternatives and calculating pros and cons. So then I could say that my framework was more of a naturalistic decision making. Just look at how people make decisions in actual context. Uh, and of course, looking at experts, seeing how people who already have acquired those skills make decisions. So what you see in many fields is that fields ranging from computer science to baseball to firefighting to medicine to nursing, you see that experts, when they make decisions, they are not so much busy with exploring alternatives. They are busy with sense
Mm,
making. They trying to understand, yeah, the situation, and they come up with like a very rough approximation to a problem in order to come up with solutions, but they are always temporary. So
mm,
in a way, this very closely aligned with Jane Darkey's ideas of the primary generator from the late 70s, in which
mm,
designers, they come up with a primary generator and they use that to explore the complexity of a design problem. So that all of a sudden was like my eureka moment. So wow, this is really significant. And yeah, so then I ended up kind of yeah, coming up with a model of design that is design decision making that explores both the intuitive aspects, that the one that you um, kind of you find the answers immediately when you face like problems that you are used to. And then for a lot of other issues, then you need to do a lot of analysis and simulation, mental simulation, which you do through sketching, through storytelling, through many different techniques that we learn in the different design schools all over the world. And these are not only elements or tools for representation, but are tools for exploring the problem. I mean, I mean, that's something that in a way serves to explain how we are able to come up with a yeah, design proposal at all. And then so I kind of that yeah, that field so was about how we make decisions, and then this was the early 2010s. So then I didn't do very much with that. So I kind of didn't engage in writing papers. I was more engaged in teaching and things like that. So, but then in the 2015, something like that, I kind of realized that I was much more interested in not even the how people make decisions, but on the normative issues like related to
mm,
decision making. So as to why. So what should we decide, and what like that brought me to ethics. So I started doing a lot of reading, kind of yeah, thinking, well, I already have a PhD, and then I can do the reading on my own. But then I realized that that was much harder than the literature I was used to. I mean, my PhD is in management, in design theory in management, and that was, I mean, it was very humbling because I was reading like a lot of texts that were yeah, really hard to read, and I had to read them like twice or three times or four times, and then uh, it, I learned a lot of things while reading philosophy uh, about the technique of reading and thinking. So,
Mm,
so then that I decided to go back to uni to take a master's in ethics, which I looked at the departments and in the UK, that system I was familiar with, and kind of a philosophy, some department that I had some affinity with. So I did my master's in ethics in Birmingham, and I got some great professors that were working on the capabilities approach and on theories of happiness, and I really liked that the philosophy department was closely connected to the theology, religion, or philosophy of religion. So that's something that I'm not a religious person. That's a topic that I find really
mm,
interesting as well. So I did my master's in ethics, and then as I was having to write, so I was being back to being a student, so I had to write my term papers. Of course, the methodological part, that was very easy, like how to cite and how to structure your paper. I knew that. But then I had to write, but yeah, I learned about, I don't know, like global ethics or the ethics of the environmental ethics and things like that. And then I discovered, AI and machine learning was like starting to become important. This is like 2016, and the discussion was not very public yet. I mean, you didn't see many articles about machine learning or neural networks in the media the way you see it today. So I said, oh wow, this is like I really like this topic. So I started writing more about that. So I used my term papers. I centered them on AI. I robotics as well. So I wrote a paper on autonomous weapons that got published on the IEEE Society and Technology magazine. This is 2017, I believe, and it was about the ethics of autonomous weapons, and I was very much against using autonomous weapons on both utilitarian grounds. That means because they're shit and they cannot really they don't work. But I was also against them on more principled grounds. So even if they work, even if they can tell who's a combatant and who's a civilian, I argue that we should use them for different reasons. Um, and I so that's kind of I started researching that. So this topic is so depressing. So I moved into everyday AI. That was much more depressing because that's what I'm working on today, more or less like the everyday AI ethics. So not I kind of because I started getting a lot of invitations from events that I didn't like, like
yeah.
for the military and for police. And I was like, no, I don't want to go to these events. I don't want to name countries or institutions, but they came from many different corners. And no, this is not the type of community I want to belong to. Um, so yeah, and this is I've been the last 6 7 years I've been mainly working on AI and technology more broadly, and still I do a lot of writing on design. So my book, um, and I wrote several papers, and one of them is it's going to be published in next year and it's an honor for me because it's a book edited by Fernando Secomandi from Delft University in the Netherlands and Peter Paul Verbeek. And Peter Paul Verbeek is one of my intellectual heroes. I cite him in my book a lot. And like last year, they released uh, um, a call for papers for an edited book, and they mentioned my book in their call for papers. So I was like super stoked to read that, and they invited me to submit a paper, which I wrote with some colleague from the Barcelona Supercomputing Center, The paper is about, we can talk about that later if you want to, it's about how we are, like our ethical decision making is actually regulated by tacit, implicit ideals that we have internalized,
Mm,
and not so much by following some type of code or external norm.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's like more or less in the way you, as a designer, can tell so what a good grid is or what a good material for your chair is. So you are not really like following a book, right? So you are like you have your internalized knowledge, and often you know, yeah, this is not the right material. And of course, you can come up with reasons why that's not the right material because you also have the knowledge. But that the first acquaintance with yes or no is more of an intuitive reason, which is like yeah, anchored in expertise. Of course, not is not based on or underpinned by arbitrariness, but by actual real knowledge. So yeah, so I'm still doing yeah, half of my work is on the design, you could say design studies field. And now
I
they are converging. They are
Yeah,
converging a bit
that's what
because
I
of
was
the
gonna
generative.
say.
Yeah,
Exactly. Like,
because of the
I don't think
generative AI. Yeah,
exactly. I think Gen A, because of Gen AI, we should just it's okay. We can I don't think they're like separate anymore. It's very much
yeah,
intertwined into design world on a day-to-day now. But I'm
yeah.
fascinated by that life journey too, because it's like you're like working here and there and like suddenly it's just like all morphed into this like this one big thing where like all they're very intertwined and very relevant and you can't really let go any of the parts, right? I think with Gen AI that happened to design ethics, I think like compared to, I mean, at least maybe, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. Like, when we used to work on projects, maybe like even 5, 6 years ago, the like first of all, there were way more in silos, right? Oh, this is the like responsible, inclusive, accessible, whatever corner projects. Like we're doing these here. Oh, that's the sustainability project. That's there, right? And they were very much siloed, and they were very much more around like one-off projects, a little bit like awareness stuff, right? And like now I find it's a little bit like there's more understanding. No, we can't think about these separately. And also there's more of an understanding of, oh, like, wait a second, we need to kind of reflect on our processes, capacities, and all of that before even talking about doing anything about it, right? And I think that's that's what like fascinates me when I still see kind of like the tech solutionism or design centricism, whatever we want to call it, where like there are so many things in our systems, processes, human behaviors that are still we need to address before we really want to like just like champion, these like saviors that are going to come and like solve everything. So I find your writing and work and also like kind of the approach you always talk about very human in a way that it feels actionable, right? I think going back to your earlier point around like these theories or frameworks that really it's cool to read about them and reflect on them and like discuss and debate around them. And we see that a lot with ethics. How what does that mean on your day-to-day actions? I think that's where we kind of see paralysis in kind of translating those. And I find your work very much and communication style too, going back to what you said around some readings in ethics is just like it can take a whole day and you still may
Hmm.
not know what they're talking about. So I really appreciate what you're doing in that space. There is a quote in I'm going to quote your book where you talk about feeling uneasy is a whole person thing and it's not a professional thing. Um, and I think, and I want to touch upon that again, going back to the silos. We have been in a world where our like personal selves and professional selves were so separated. I think we blurred that a little bit forcefully during the pandemic because suddenly our messiness was in the background. People's dogs and cats were jumping in the screen, right? Gen Z is much more authentic in the way they're like working and communicating. Um, so that started to get blurred, but I don't think we talk enough about um, there is no such thing as that separation, right? And the more you're kind of being pushed to do whatever you're doing, like unethical work, or not even considering if it's ethical or unethical, right? Just like doing mindless work, let's say, or not working mindfully. Um, what that what does that do to a profession or an entire field, right? And like what are even like what could be, and we're kind of maybe seeing them a little bit, but the consequences of that forced disassociation, which really is an illusion and it really is not there.
Hmm. Yeah, this separation between, I mean, we we all are like we have different roles. Like I'm a professor, but at the same time I'm somebody's friend, I'm somebody's son,
Yeah.
and I'm a citizen, and yeah, I have very many different roles, right? And some of these roles are kind of easy to keep together, right? So the problem is when yeah, we all work a lot of hours every day, so some roles are really important. And they kind of demand a big deal of our lives. So working, so our role as a professional, I don't want to separate into only personal and professional, but if we keep that distinction simple between professional life and personal life, just for simplicity's sake, yeah, a big deal of our day is dedicated to our work, right? So that means that we occupy different roles. So me as a person have these different roles, and there is there is of course a tension between these different roles,
Mm,
and this tension becomes problematic when I need to compartmentalize myself, when I need to like really silo myself into uh, the professional role that is totally disconnected with the personal role, because they both
yeah,
live in me, right? So it's I'm a
yeah,
person, I'm a whole person. So if I divide myself into two uh, um, perfectly differentiated compartments, then I'm in a way I'm a diminished person because I'm fragmented.
yeah,
So integrity, that's what I write in the book, and I write in a newer paper I had this year. Integrity is not about like being a saint, right? It's not about being always making the
mm,
right ethical decisions, but integrity is about keeping yourself whole. It's about
yeah,
like yeah, not being fragmented, right? So the
yeah,
integrity is a word that is closely related to wholeness, and then if you want to keep your integrity in a way that requires to have this at least some communication between your different roles. So that means
yeah,
very simply like that is it might be a coping mechanism. I get that. I mean, sometimes this is fragmenting ourselves. We live, yeah, in a capitalistic society, and sometimes we are like expected to do things as a professional, as a designer, for example, things that we do not approve of as a citizen or as a father,
mm,
right? Or
yeah,
as a
yeah,
and we are constantly, and I'm not talking about life and death issues, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
simple things, and that what the way I suggest that we can navigate those dilemmas is not by shutting these tensions off, but by embracing them in a way and understanding why we did what we did,
yeah,
and owning it in a way.
yeah,
Um, this great philosopher is Iris Murdoch, and she writes that she says that we act rightly when time comes, and not out of the strength of will. So it's not we act rightly because we in a way have the right attachments. So by
yeah,
keeping these these different roles that we inhabit open to ourselves as a whole person, then we develop the right attachments. There's a lot of very fruitful conversations about care in ethics, in sorry, in design, and I think this caring is very important, but it's also about caring about ourselves, but not in the sense of like pampering ourselves, but in the sense of like keeping ourselves whole by preserving our integrity. And one way of preserving our integrity is having this connecting channels between the roles open, and that in a way when we do that, then we see the whole picture, and then we see, okay, I did what I
Mm,
did because of these reasons, and then we can see what is gained and what is lost, and how we change ourselves by doing what we done and why we did it, and we can kind of submit ourselves to scrutiny as well. So yeah, so it's not so much about the right thing in sense of Kantian sense of the canon of right actions, but more of doing yeah, being yeah, whole, right? And at the same time, it's important to do this because it is by doing this that you can uh, see the kind of person that you really want to be, right? So
mm,
it has to do with how you uh, um, enact yourself. It has to do with how you become the person
yeah,
you want to be. It has a lot to do with aspiration as well. So you work towards that goal. So am I the kind of person that want to design dark patterns for a living or deceptive patterns? So you can ask yourself those questions, right? So I don't
yeah,
want to be that person. So that will give you uh, a motive, right? To yeah,
yeah,
try to find alternative ways. And of course, even if you're not able to find those alternative ways because you have to make ends meet or for any reason,
yeah,
you can at least see why you've done it, right? So then you can. It's not about rationalizing away the guilt or anything. Has
yeah,
that
yeah.
do with that? So yeah, so I think this idea of a responsibility. I mean, it has this. This is connected to responsibility and being responsible in the profession.
I was just gonna say that's so important because I don't think in companies, and this is not only designers, right? General and business practices too. We don't take the time to like reflect and just be like, and not and be reflexive, right? Like, okay, so this happened. Like, what can we learn from that, and what can happen next, or what do we don't do next, or what would we do next, right? Even that thought exercise, especially to your point, when you're at a time where you don't maybe have even the power to do the right thing, or you, like to your point, need the job, can't leave it. But what can you learn from it so you can maybe think about what you might do next time? Or um, kind of, or you're very junior at your job and you're kind of doing what you're told, but what may you try next? I think this is also important for like young professionals to hear because then if that mindset is not the case, then it's sometimes an all or nothing. Oh, I'm not going to work for that company. But then if none of the good valued people who care about ethics and being responsible and care for their outcomes work in those companies, that's more concerning to me. Like we actually need you to stay in those companies. But like to your point, if they can zoom out and see this as like okay, in the big picture, where does this fall? What is it teaching me? What do I do next? Trying to navigate that. I think it's so valuable for them to hear what you're saying so that we kind of reframe how we're looking at it. And it's not like, oh, I did that, or you feel torn because it doesn't sit with your values. Let's just zoom out a little bit, right? And maybe even like compartmentalize.
Yeah.
We're saying don't compartmentalize, but like recognize your integrity. I think that's beautiful. I
Yeah,
love that. Like,
exactly. It's about reframing, a lot about reframing, because like I totally share your view. I mean, in a lot of cases, we don't have the power to do a lot of things, and now that is not affecting a lot of professionals that used to have that power. Like take doctors and nurses
yeah,
that used to have like a great degree of autonomy. Now they're employees, just like most
yeah,
designers are in working out for a
so
company,
true.
So they in a way, if you look at them, and I did a lot of work on the field of health in the last years, and something that I encountered a lot is like doctors and nurses that they tell me that they are thinking about leaving their jobs because they cannot exercise medicine or nursing the way they want to do it, right?
Yeah,
So they are thinking about doing something else because the this lack of this expectation, this drive for efficiency. You were saying that we don't have time to reflect, and this has to do with this doing more and faster all the time. So
Yeah.
this, yeah, instrumental reason we can call it is pervading all spheres of life. But I want to go back to this idea of reframing. I think, yeah, I think it was Ezio Mancini, the Italian design scholar. He writes about expanding the realm of possibilities, and so in a way, when what you can do, um, you can reframe the issue and present an alternative possibility, and that alternative possibility might not challenge the status quo totally, might not defeat capitalism, but it might be a more reasonable um, course of action than the one you
Yeah.
were expecting, right? So, and sometimes you might say, "Oh, no, I don't want to work for this company anymore," of course, or I don't want to work
Yeah.
for a. That's absolutely. I take no issue with that, but in sometimes you might discover an alternative that is. Yeah, more friendly with your o- outlook on life and with ethics in general, and then you might try to work towards that. So yeah, that's the idea. When if you do not think about it, if you tell yourself things like, "Oh, well, it's just a job," or I'm do yeah, then you don't get to that stance.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's yeah. And we've already seen, and I'm sure you're seeing this in the younger generation, like I just want to do just design is never an answer, right? Like there's so much more like I want to do something in sustainability, I want to do something there. But then what I see then when they go into companies, the discouragement is so fast, right? Like because suddenly you're like, okay, you introduce yourself in a maybe 200-year-old system, and it's not going to change overnight, right? But like if we can also mentally prep people and more reading and understanding around, also like, I mean, one thing we discuss often in around ethics is it kind of, in the end, the aim is to try to give you tools to be able to communicate on things that might normally be triggering for you or you might take personally. But like when you're introduced frameworks and have a conversation around that, maybe we can actually have conversations around difficult topics without taking it personally because we're looking at through a certain lens, right? And I mean, I'm sure like because the global trend where like we can't even see proper presidential debates, right? Like we're losing the skill of debates. Design in design students, I see kind of this like, and not even students, like designers and companies too, disempowerment, right? Not having the being able to communicate why this is needed, or like pointing fingers to each department also happens, like who's responsible of what. Also in between engineering, design, all around, right? I think we kind of, to your earlier point, also have these more practical tools to be able to use in a day to day, not only to like give ourselves more agency or sense of safety and security to be able to continue something or confidence, but also really be able to communicate with each other without getting heated at all times. Now, like everything is either like an argument between like two departments or like it's in silos. Like I was in South by Southwest in March. Somebody should redesign South by Southwest. I'm saying this to public because I sat like kind of like a field research. I kind of went to like all AI panels and it felt like there were two camps. One was like, tech is the future. It feels like, Star Wars, everyone's hyped, the audience is totally different, communication style is different, how they're presenting is different, right? Like AI for everything and it's saving everything. That's that camp. And then there's another camp that talks about, ethics, responsibility, complete different style, complete different audience. And you're kind of like, isn't a conference supposed to like, why are they like here? Why are they don't have their own style design, whatever? Why aren't they like together, right? And I didn't see like a constructive conversation on a panel with all these
Mm.
like members. And we we really need to be able to have these tools where we are brought together and be able to have these conversations without feeling like, oh, I'm doing my product and this like the mistrust or disinformation or ethics or accessibility team is going to tell me not to do this. Like it's kind of dreaded at this point how everything is set up. And I would, love to hear your thoughts on how your approach could also reflect into professions, especially now, like we're seeing, in AI, it's even more urgent because of how
Mm.
fast it's spreading and being used, right? Like clearly we need to change our approach even before using how we're developing, right? So, but then how do we use these tools in the process that you're suggesting?
Yeah, I mean, the thing with AI and with you could say that it's like some uh, engineering mindset is that we think about uh, like, can we do this, right? But that the fact that we can do something, that doesn't mean that we should do it, right? So then you have this using machine learning to you do composites with pictures to see somebody's sexual orientation. And so whether that works or not, of course it doesn't work, but that's beside the point. The point is, why do we want a system like that? What would we want a system like that? And if we have a system like that, to what type of society does that drive us? Because
Yeah.
technology is not fully determine us as a society and as humans, but it does co-shape us, right? So we are in this mutual shape or co-shaping in which we shape our technology, and the technology in turn will shape us. So why would we want that? What is a good reason for having a system that can detect uh, um, my emotions, of pretend to detect my emotions if I'm sitting in a class, right? Just have smaller classes and have teachers be able to look at the students in the eye and see if they are bored or excited, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so the problem is then now we have classes that are huge because we are cutting budgets, and then we need AI to make it work. But that's yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Oh,
It's like
yeah.
surrendering to this idea of a it's kind of a optimizing something yeah, it's kind of a subprime optimization, right? This is
Yeah.
like optimizing for for the worst. And then so one thing, if I think about this the idea of purpose, and that's really important in my work and in the book and in other papers I wrote, is the idea of design is if design is a profession, we are missing some awareness about what is the purpose of our profession. So if you look at if you ask a doctor or a nurse or a teacher or a primary school teacher is their profession about, they might
Mm,
have a lot of answers that will align. And so they will like doctors and nurses will say about like something about health. They might have
mm,
different conceptions of health. We live in a plural society, and we don't have to think that there's like a monolithical definition of health. There are many definitions of health, but they all agree that health is important and that medicine and nursing
yeah.
has centrally to do with health. And if you ask teachers, and teachers are underpaid everywhere, right? So it's not like they are like very prestigious profession because they become rich, right? So there are other professionals that might get more money, but teachers certainly don't. Um, but they will tell you about, yeah, something about like of course something about knowledge, but also about helping people become citizens or developing their autonomy within a community. Many things that teachers will tell you, and so they have a sense of uh, 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 of what their profession is about. And we have a lot of knowledge about design tools and design methods, right? And this is something that I think it was Buchanan, Richard Buchanan, who, like in the 1990s, wrote that if you ask designers about methods, they will tell you a lot of things. But if you ask them about the principles that are underpinning their actions, they cannot say much about it, right? So
Mm.
and I'm not even there. I'm not even saying about principles. I'm saying that we don't know, we don't have a shared understanding of what design is about,
Yeah.
right? And we need to. We don't have. I mean, my view, we don't have to come to to uh, to come up. It's a young profession. Of course, doctors and nurses have like millennia behind their backs. I mean,
Yeah.
millennia they've been healing people, so they know what their teachers the same, and clerics the same, and architects
Yeah.
the same. But we don't. I mean, we are in a very new profession. As of course, humans have been designing forever, but as a profession, we are a new
Right.
profession,
Yeah.
and modern design is like post World War II, right? So that connected to the industry and to governments. Um, so we need to find this awareness, I think, and I think we need to have these conversations of what design is about. And I don't know, I might be that we will have some um, differences, and there will be some very. I don't think that the profession of design is about the technical aspect only. It has to be a profession. It needs to have something to do. Needs to be strategically connected to humans, to the
Yeah.
well-being of human and non-human beings, because that's what professions are about. I mean, professions are strategically connected to key goods in an
Yeah.
ethical sense,
Yeah.
right? If you take even
Yeah.
like very traditional things like a priest or an imam or a rabbi,
Yeah.
it's about the soul, right? It's about how we relate to things that are difficult to conceive without a religion, and then so they have a purpose, right? And they do
Yeah.
many other things as well, good
Yeah.
things and terrible things, but that's beside the point.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
idea
Yeah.
is that they
Yeah,
that they
they
yeah,
justify their existence. I mean, that's why, like design is playing defense in companies, right? They can get eliminated as a department fully. We've seen it many, many times happening. If they exist, sometimes they're homeless, like they don't have a C-suite to report to, right? They report to somebody else's leader. They're mostly not represented in the boardroom, right? So they're disempowered. Meanwhile, so I think it's a very valid argument to like think about why is design a profession and how is it justified? And for designers to also like reflect on that. I think um, I'm reflecting on, I teach a 1 year inclusive design class at MFA Interaction Design. And the reason why it's 1 year is that the first semester, the students do everything but design. Because um, I'm kind of like we see this in engineering too, right? Like in machine learning, an engineer gets this data set. Like how often is it that that data set is questioned or asked or critiqued or looked into, right? Like you just act on the data that you have without any questioning because that's your job. And in design, you might have a brief, but how can we even, if we don't understand design research, if we don't develop the muscle of synthesis, like, and if we don't have design principles, going back to principles, how are we even gonna like reframe that brief, right? Like,
yeah,
why are we doing this in the first place? And I think designers before like, and going back to solutionism, right? Like I originally studied engineering and my profession evolved into kind of design strategy. I see solutionism in both worlds, right? Like we love it. We marry them immediately. We want to do it, right? And it's like, and I like going back to the what you were saying around the tension with like capitalism and the fast pace, right? We don't slow down to reflect a little bit like, is this even the right thing to do in the first place? And if so, why? If not, why? And I think I'm wondering if kind of research gives more power to design and or like justification in design in like corporate setup too, because like how do you act on an insight, right? Like isn't design equals the action, whatever action you're going to take on that insight. You can design a process, you can design a system, you can design a framework, you can design a product, right? Like there's a lot of design can go into many different directions out of those insights. But it goes back to, I think, very human things, like understanding the people, understanding the context. Why are we doing this in the first place? And if designers had better understanding in research and not necessarily like, oh, research told us this, so we're going to do this. If that bridge either happens more seamlessly, like that co-synthesis maybe, or if, designer is also the researcher in the room with others, um, maybe we kind of address that crisis and like, what is
Mm,
my role, right? Like, I often reflect on this too because my question is like, how do because in going back to what you said around like teachers are underpaid, clearly they value other things. Designers are also underpaid, but they still want to be designers. And because there's this like different like some either care or like interest in creating something, often more and more I hear from students like, I want to improve like lives, right, through design. I want to create more inclusive solutions. I want to create
mm,
more environmental solutions, right? We're seeing with the upcoming generations so much more interest to do the right thing through design.
mm,
But then my biggest question mark always is then like, how do they get empowered, right? Like, how
mm.
do we empower them and give them the tools to be able to move with that? Because then what we have is like people either are doing these in like their own small circles or it doesn't come to fruition and then that leads to frustrations and
Yeah,
at some point giving up.
yeah. I mean, that's I mean, yeah, it is. You definitely need an environment that is hospitable to your purpose. So
Yeah,
not all
true.
environments are
Yeah,
hospitable.
yeah,
So I think this I cannot cite it properly, but I think it was Cameron Tonkinwise who cites this Albert Borgman, the German philosopher, in Tonkinwise in one of his papers, cites that Borgman says something that just like reading animal tracks is a skill that will not be acquired in an urban environment, right? It's just not the right place to learn uh, to uh,
yeah,
to find animals, you know. So if you need to go elsewhere. So this is, I mean, Albert Borgman is a very pessimistic philosopher, but it does have it makes us think, that's a good thing. So I don't think that all corporate environments are necessarily against a more reflective approach, but some might be.
mm,
If the only consideration is the bottom line, then it's definitely very
yeah,
difficult to go beyond a certain point. So I'm not sure about this, but I do think that there might be a future, like a middle term future, in which like are the technical skills of like designers working for hardcore corporate environments will be like technicians, right? That do
mm,
not, in a way, they have all the skills a professional designer has, but it's not questioning the purpose of what they do.
yeah, yeah,
But there will maybe other fields that are more hospital. And of course, I'm thinking in terms of like some institutions, public institutions, and other environments that might be still require a lot of design work and corporate and enterprises that that see their work as a public good as well. So not only they are not
mm,
only interested in the bottom line. Of course, if you take the hardcore approach from Milton Friedman, that's the only purpose of a business is to satisfy their stakeholders.
yeah,
Yeah, that's definitely, yeah, not a very good hospitable place.
yeah,
Um, so then I think that's why the idea of profession is important, because the profession is not so much about the skill or the technical ability, because technicians have that too, but it's more uh, uh, about like having like a primary consideration for this social element that legitimizes your profession. So
yeah,
if you give up that social element that is inevitably related to well-being in a
yeah,
full uh, full uh, fully fledged sense, not about just feeling a sense of having nice feelings, but more about flourishing as a human being.
Yeah.
Um, then if you do not consider that the human flourishing or the flourishing of other beings as important, then yeah, then it's difficult to make a case for design being a profession. Uh,
Yeah.
you're a technician. That's great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being a technician, but then this professional element, in the way I understand it, is not so much about getting paid for a job. It's not about the quality of the
Yeah.
technical result, because that is important. That's a necessary element, but it's this other element that characterizes a profession. And then yeah, so this is this would be my
Yeah, I mean the value, the purpose, and even like we have sufficient amount of problems in the world that we could that can give designers purpose, right? But like connecting that through, which is why I think like eventually, sometimes um like we see, like inclusive designer job posts, which, I teach inclusive design, so I get it, but at the same time hopefully we come to a point where that just drops as an objective and the methods that you do in like co-design or participatory approach, whatever we want to call it, just becomes common practice, right? So we just say designer, hopefully, and then the
mm,
profession is so in tune and in touch with communities, with people, understanding and answering like co-solutioning, let's say, right? Like
yeah,
not doing by themselves, which could like,
absolutely. Yeah, there's just
yeah.
a lot of these things that were like sustainability or for example, or inclusivity are becoming in a way must-haves. So things that we are not
Yeah.
thinking like, oh, shall my project be inclusive and sustainable or not,
Yeah.
right? So, but then because we are integrating that, that's really important, because we are integrating that, but that is questioning a whole in a very deep way our methods, right? So
Yeah.
we these participatory approaches, like you can take participatory and a participatory approach that absolutely exploitative and is
Oh, yes.
unfair, right?
Yes.
So then
100%. Yeah.
yeah, right. So sure, thinking about, yeah, who you include, you want to be inclusive, okay, but how are the benefits going to be distributed among the people who have participated, and who's
Exactly.
excluded, right? Who am I not
Exactly.
including? And then is this participation just, do they really have a say and do they really have power, like these
Yeah.
design participants, or
Yeah.
they are
Or is
just
it
merely
inclusion
there?
washing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. So that
Yeah.
means that
So
we
true.
also need to reflect on our role as yeah, formalizers, because that is something that we, in theory, we are specially trained to do, and then we do have those abilities that require, yeah, have a high steep learning curve, and then how we share that with other design participants, right? So that's
Yeah.
an issues of yeah, discussions about epistemic justice and design justice and all these new, yeah, more contemporary discussions start to emerge, but that is because we, in a way, are thinking, okay, participation, of course, but of course now we are like going back because of generative AI, so we don't need research because we can have synthetic personas now. We can
Oh my
ask ChatGPT
God.
to,
I
to generate,
can't even talk about personas. I hate that so much.
yeah,
But no, and it's yeah, it's such a good point. And it's going back to reflection and integrity, right? Like in what we're doing. And I mean, I know we can talk about this all day. Like this should be like a talk show, I feel like more than a podcast episode. But to kind of give like both like wrap up with like advice to design students or young professionals, but also like people in tech too, because I feel like with the same things were happening in design, we see a little bit with like um, education around and like engineering, where like ethics sometimes it's a class on its own and it's never talked about in any other class. Like that's what I hear from a lot of engineering students, and therefore like how is this even applicable in my like day to day? So what would be your some practical tools, advice, final for young professionals or students who really want to like care and want to be able to reflect that into their work.
Okay. Like, yeah, first, like a general thing about caring, like, because like we have a limited amount of time and energy
Yeah.
available, right? So we care about a lot of things, but we cannot care for those things, all the things that we care about. So
Yeah.
we cannot care for all the things we care about. So we need to make a selection, and it's just like something we need to do just on practical grounds.
Yeah.
Um, so then the idea will be to be seek to transform that caring about into caring for, right? So how can we do that? One, I think an important thing will be to examine oneself and to think, okay, what do I care about, and why do I want to care for, right?
Yeah.
So develop a sense, a profound sense of what type of things are important to you as a person and as a professional, and considering that you are a part of a member of a community on different communities, right? So design is a practice. Uh, um, uh, by being a practice, it has some shared mm, mm, terminology and values. So
Yeah.
you need to find your practice, your community, and you need to find out how your values and the things that you care for uh, relate to the practice as a whole. So because if you take the invest your energy in finding that, you will see that you are not alone. That's something that is important to many other people. And then this idea of you alone against capitalism is kind of a it's not a bug. It's a design. It's by design, right? It's
Yeah.
capitalism. The way it wants you to think that you are like a individual, atomized, helpless person,
Yeah.
right? So if you see that what you worry about and what you care for and what you care about and what you want to do is not only your purpose and your goal, but also many other people's, then you will feel empowered because you will find your tribe. And in that sense, um, yeah, one thing will be to try to do that, and that also accepting that nothing is inevitable. So if you that
Yeah.
this idea of AI cannot be stopped, yeah, maybe it cannot be stopped, but that presents AI as something that is like a force on its own, like gravity, and it's not like that. It's a bunch of guys in
Yeah,
Silicon Valley and in other places, like uh, and a lot of investors
exactly.
and a lot of people peddling this as if it's inevitable and if it's its own autonomous thing, which is not.
Yeah.
And I mean, we don't have now the time to engage in a new conversation about technology.
I've mixed up stuff.
Next time, yeah. But this idea of inevitability is the what is causing a lot of damage now. Like you see,
True.
like we are seeing it in universities how generative AI is being used by a lot of students, and that brings administrators. Oh no, we need to implement it and we need to embrace it because everyone is using it. Oh wait, let's think about this first. Like, what problem is it solving? So we go back to Cedric Price, who said, okay, technology is the solution, but what was the problem? Right? So what problem is AI in education solving? Where's the evidence that this can solve something? And then if you look at, I'm not saying that in 2018 I guest edited a journal about AI as a design material. So I'm not against AI, and
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah,
guest
yeah.
this with the head of the AI study in the Polytechnic University in Barcelona. So it's a guy who does AI for a living. So we what we totally accept that AI, and I totally accept that AI can be a design material, can be a useful tool, but certainly not not these tools that are built on exploitation and abuse. Um,
Yeah.
at the same time, uh, this is, if you see like the results, if you see the videos that are being generated with Sora now, that
Yeah.
they're terrible, and the license is super expensive, but they are really terrible. And then you have all these guys who know nothing about filmmaking or motion or graphics or anything, tell you how great this is. You have all these AI evangelists talking about illustration, and they have no clue about illustration, right? So, and that is what worries me the most, that you have all these people who are from other practices, and don't get the practice,
Yeah.
or don't get what the practice is about, telling you the future of the practice or how the future of the practice is going to be. And that is I find that terrible, and we should resist that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that my
So critical thinking as well. And like this,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, so it will be, yeah, not don't believe this idea of inevitability. Don't take
Yeah.
this, as you were saying before, these projections of the future. They are not about, yeah. Don't take them at face value. I mean, we need to think about what we're doing and
Humans are
why.
behind everything in the end. So it's
Yeah,
on us,
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Nothing's happening to us, like we're causing them. So we should also feel empowered by that too. Ariad, I really can like talk to you all day. I think it should be a continuing conversation for like every book or publication you do. And I hope to have you as a guest in some of my classes as well, because I think this should be an ongoing conversation.
Anytime.
Thank you for your contributions also to the field. I find it very useful. So really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, Pinar, for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for watching this week's episode. If you found value in these conversations, please like our video and hit the subscribe button. Make sure to visit our website, podcast.what'swrongwith.xyz, and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts so you never miss an episode. Please leave us a comment or review, or you can simply tell your friends about us. For more details on our guests, follow us on Instagram and Twitter. You can find our handles in the description below. And don't forget to join us next week. See you.